when I first heard about this study with the mice and stuff, like what popped into my head was like vampires.
What is up? We're back on episode 58 of Your House, Our Rules. Mike had to leave. He's got his cousin's graduation that he's got to go to. I was asking, I was like, how close is this family member? And he's like, nah, I'm really close with him, so I got to make sure that I get there on time. It is what it is. Things happen sometimes. We were supposed to talk about some stuff, but me and Jeff are just going to continue on solo because we got to get the stuff out. 8 minutes didn't really cut it for just the other one, so we got to talk about some other stuff. But the other thing that we had in the news, and I wish Bailey was here to talk about this a little bit because she's the one who shared the article, but tech billionaire Bryan Johnson is essentially taking, I saw that it was a liter out of his 17-year-old son, or blood out of his 17-year-old son, and like transfusing it into his own to help himself stay youthful or whatever. And just to like kind of put that into perspective, 1 liter of blood is about a fifth of what the average human body holds in their body of blood.
Yeah, I thought it's like 6 liters or something like that.
Something like that. I think the article said 5, so that's
probably accurate.
Yeah, so around there. But the point is, like a fifth. We're talking about like 20% of your blood and extracting it from your kid to help stay youthful. And he also is apparently doing it with his grandfather too, who's in his 70s, to help him like extend his life or whatever. And there's not much backing to prove that this stuff actually works, but it does raise some like conspiracy theories that we can start getting into and start talking about like, does it work or whatever? Because I mean, when it comes down to it, I could see how like if you're doing like a white blood cell transfusion, that makes sense because they have a lot more like longevity to them rather than like red blood cells, which I think end up like regenerating every 3 days or something like that. Do you know anything about that?
I am not sure on that.
But they also have plasma, which is kind of like that liquidy stuff that is just your blood cells are floating through or whatever. 70% of our bodies are water, so I could see how it's all pseudoscience, but when it comes down to it, I could really see this stuff working in some way because you're essentially just replacing old cells with new cells, the more youthful things. And I don't know if they'd like mix and just help longevity with your own cells, but when you're replacing older cells with newer cells that are like in their lifespan of like the 70 whatever years it is, I could see how it would make a little bit of sense.
Yeah, I mean, like, because slowly, like after so long, like your cells and stuff don't regenerate, like they break down and like they don't replicate properly. So like I guess the theory is that with the younger blood, like that those cells will be from a younger person, so they're still replicating properly. And I guess it's like a just like a little kick in the ass for your body to produce things better, in an older age.
But I guess it would be one of those things where if you like were to put these cells into the older body or whatever, would that just like immediately degenerate the cells to the point that your body is at, like aging wise? I mean, this is all such like theoretical stuff, and we don't know that much about like how this process works. I guess this is one way to figure out if it does work. It'd have to be a long-term study to see if there is more longevity. You'd have to look at like how old their grandparents lived and stuff like that. But, come to that, we've advanced so much medically that it would be kind of hard because back when like our great-grandfathers were alive in the 1800s or whatever, the life expectancy was probably 20, 30 years less than it is now.
Yeah, I mean, for multiple reasons, but obviously, like I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on the word, but like the medical field like wasn't as advanced. Obviously, that's like the main reason. But like everything, there wasn't like OSHA back in the day to like make sure that warehouses and stuff were safe. So
and sanitary and stuff like that.
So people died from all kinds of other like fuck shit as well.
Yeah, but that also comes from us learning about disease and how that type of stuff can affect the body. Work the other day, we had to not do a job because the windows were like lead based. And it wasn't until like the last 50 years that we realized that like lead
they were
is
putting
highly
lead.
toxic.
They were putting lead in gasoline, and it was fucking everywhere and fucking all kinds of shit up. There was a really cool episode of on what was that show Neil deGrasse Tyson did?
Cosmos.
Cosmos, the remake of the old one. But there's a study of them doing this with mice. What this guy is doing now, and supposedly
you think this is where he got the idea from.
I would imagine so. I mean, because it says that in recent years, researchers studying mice found that giving old animals blood from young ones can reverse some signs of aging. And last year, one team identified a growth factor in the blood that they think is partly responsible for the anti-aging effect on specific tissue, the heart.
Right. And I mean, that makes sense. And when you're looking at it, like there is a reason, whether you ethically find it correct or not, there's a reason why we test stuff like this on animals, because, things like mice, they have such shorter lifespan than us, but on like a scale of things, can we scale that directly to humans? So like they might live 3 years instead of like a 70-year lifespan or whatever, but who's to say like their perception of time isn't the exact same as our lifespan? You know what I'm kind of trying to say there? Like
yeah, I mean, they would only perceive things from their their point of view.
Yeah. So if you're able to do that and you're finding that they're living like 50% longer or something like that, it would make sense to start at that point trying out human trials. And like I was saying before, if you're testing on humans, obviously this is going to take years and years. By the time we're old is when like the actual like studies will have been proven to work or not work. So testing out on animals is a good way to get that stuff, but it is what it is if you don't really agree with that. We do it for a reason, and it's to advance our own species.
It says that it also works in the opposite way, like when they would inject the blood from the old mice into the young mice, the young mice would rapidly age.
Rapidly age?
Yeah, okay. from the old blood.
Like I think
not as effective, basically.
The thing about it, though, is when you're doing these blood transfusions or whatever, the younger body that you're getting it from is able to regenerate their blood and stuff faster. So
yeah, right. Yeah,
there'd really be no reason.
Otherwise, you couldn't donate blood. If you weren't able to.
I mean, if it's working vice versa, it would make a lot of sense that this is something that actually has some sustainability to it. Like I said before, we can see how it works. The science makes sense. It's just a matter of fact of proving it or not. And they were saying in the article that we read that they've done some studies on it, and there's nothing really to prove that it actually does work. But maybe that's just because of lack of studying on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure that, it's... from just one study, like depending on the way that you present the data and look at it, like there's, you could like, skew it to where you want a certain outcome, in certain, things. So
like a lot of the shit that we're seeing in the medical field, and you were talking about before how like doctors were starting to prescribe people drugs because they get bonuses or whatever. They're at the end of the day, you can see it with transgender, just about everything that goes on. When money is involved and you're getting paid these bonuses to do something, it's like ethics kind of gets thrown out the window. Do we really want people to be safer, or do we want to be able to make money off it and create billions of dollars in revenue?
It's why money, greed is the root of all evil, sadly. So, I mean, it'll corrupt people that, were probably good people at one point, but, they get blinded by all this big money coming in and a flashy lifestyle that they want to, put off to other people and,
Right, and it's really hard to blame people for, kind of getting corrupt with money or whatever, because people say money isn't everything, but at the end of the day, it is. Anything that you can... Power is directly congruent to, having money, you can be able to afford the things that you need. And when you don't have to worry about where you're going to find a meal and stuff like that, it just makes your mental health so much better, and physical health, because you actually have money for food. So like everything that we can receive in this world is based around money. Now we have our own thoughts and stuff like that, but as we're kind of saying right now,
money's only existed for, it hasn't existed for that. I mean, obviously there's other types of money, but like people used to barter for all kinds of different things. So, I mean, I think that obviously in today's world, it is so important, and, it's like the main factor in everything. But like, go down to the Amazon and like, nobody wants your money. Those tribal people don't want your fucking money. They don't need it. They're gonna fucking,
they're not. But in the advanced society that we live in the world today, it's not able to, because now we have created a society where people are raised to have one function in society. There's people who are doctors, people who are lawyers, people who are working on the convention line and stuff like that. Back then, it was you needed to be a jack of all trades in order to survive. And of course, you had like your gender roles or whatever, and people might have been more particular towards one thing. But at the end of the day, back then, everything was survival. It's not all survival now. Like, we do need to survive, but like, we have television and entertainment and stuff like that now. Back then, like, they might entertain each other in their free time or whatever, but most of their time was spent hunting or supporting for their entire village.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, if you don't know how to do it, you had to figure it out back in the day. You know, it was just the way it was.
Yeah. So. And now we've got everything figured out. You can open it up online, read a book about it. That's not going to make you an expert at it. It's not going to make you good at it. But
for now.
But yeah.
You know, until, like, if something were to ever happen, like, you know, if there was a massive EMP that, you know, with all the crazy shit going on around the world right now, if a country were to do that or attack our infrastructure and shut down our, you know, our
or like all the clocks
grid.
Or like all the clocks zero out and it just fucking resets everything and shuts everything down.
Well, I mean, if we run out of power, like, you know, like 70% of the U.S. population would be dead in 3 days.
I'd imagine it probably in 3 days. Okay,
3 days.
I was already say I would think that it might be more than that. I don't know about 3 days, 70%, because we can survive on starvation for like 30 days. Water is where it really does, but I guess if you don't have
There's
power,
no pumps running the water. You can't turn your faucet on.
Right, and I think that at that point, too, we've developed as a society now where like most of our water is cleaner than like what you would get as like a primal day or whatever, because you're not getting all the bacteria and stuff from like river water or whatever. If you live by like fresh spring water, you'd be okay.
Yeah, the people that have like wells and stuff on their land and stuff like that,
but
as
then
long as they're not contaminated by some bullshit that some company's doing somewhere, dumping fucking...
Right, but then other people would try to, you know, once that all shit went down, other people would try to take the resources
for sure. That's
have.
exactly what's going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
No, when people are starving, they're going to fucking come and try and take it from somebody else. I mean, it's just like people are going to go to fucking insane real quick.
Right, and that's something that can be scary about this whole like blood transfusion. And you were talking about like the adrenaline thing before, which we can get into a little bit. But what happens when they prove that this does start working, and then the rich start you know, using the poor for their blood?
I mean, that's what I was talking about. People already think that they're doing that.
Yeah,
you know, like
so. Go ahead and explain that a little bit.
All right, so. There's like two different things. Like, one is like the stupid like QAnon theory behind it, and that's that like rich people and celebrities and stuff are doing some insane, you know, like basically taking like kids and, you know, youthful, you know, bodies and stuff like that, and then like terrorizing them to get their like adrenaline pumping, and then, you know, and then they supposedly kill them, and then like use the adrenochrome, which is stupid because that's like, you know, what they take in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. You know, that's
they're essentially just extracting the adrenaline that they just hyped up in the kids.
Yeah, and then using that, and then that like makes celebrities all, you know, youthful and good looking for longer and stuff. But like we were just talking about, like celebrities have, you know, a bunch of money. They have like really good like hair and makeup people and stuff. So before they're ever going to go out in a situation where they're going to be, you know, able to be photographed, you know, like they're going to be, you know, looking decent, you know, good before they even go out. So like, you know, so people are like, oh, you know, look, they're in their 60s and they still look like this, you know, so that's like their excuse. And then like when, as soon as there's like a bad picture of a celebrity, they would be like, oh, look, so-and-so is, you know, off the adrenochrome now because, you know, they look like shit. And like
it's not something that I see as too far-fetched. I mean, it's pretty far-fetched, but when you think about like Bohemian Grove and like the pedophile island and some of these like conspiracy theories that like everyone thinks are super wacky conspiracy theories, and then they come true, it's like these multi-billionaire people got money to do whatever they want to.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
They're psychopaths with no empathy or with no sympathy for anything. They're willing to do that type of stuff. Why wouldn't you?
Well, when the Epstein stuff came out, like that was like all the QAnon people were like, see, we told you, you know, and it's like going to that extent, like the whole adrenochrome shit and like tormenting kids to get their like adrenaline flowing and like to take that, like that is just like, that seems like far-fetched and insane. Like, but like when I first heard about this study with the mice and stuff, like what popped into my head was like vampires, like, and where like that theory might have come from, like, you know, occult, like Illuminati, like crazy stuff. And like these, you know, wealthy people, in the past, like maybe that's, like where the stories of vampires came from, because like these occult rituals, they knew that like if they took blood from a younger person, that that they could use that.
Yeah, and there's the whole whore thing with like the pure virgin and stuff like that, and like when you have like this young innocence that is pure or whatever, and their blood isn't tainted, like it would. There's the thought of mine there that like, hey, if we just like drink their blood, we can do it. And,
Well, think about that from like an aspect of like back in like the 1800s or something like that, and they just find like a body that somebody drained the blood out of, and then like, just left somewhere, and so then they're like, oh, okay, this is where the vampires came from, but it was actually probably just some rich guy that was that doing some occult ritual to like keep themselves younger and surviving and stuff like that.
It would make a lot of sense for sure.
That's what popped into my head the first time I read the article. This is
a conspiracy theory that you kind of came up with your own. Okay, yeah, I mean, shit, that would make a lot of sense.
Makes more sense to me than the adrenochrome.
Right,
bullshit.
And it explains a lot, because you can, even back in the day, we knew how to like extract blood or like.
Oh yeah, I mean there was they found
because I don't know if you can like extract adrenaline or adrenochrone or whatever you're talking about.
Yeah, that shit just seems.
I know there is like a drug that they use to I think it's in Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction, when she overdoses, when Uma Thurman, I think it's Uma Thurman's character, overdoses whatever, and they hit her in the chest. That's adrenaline, but I don't know if that's like adrenaline that pumps through our body, or that's just a drug that they call adrenaline. That's like essentially back in the day Narcan type shit. So, but yeah, there's a lot of shit going on there, man. But yeah, the whole vampire thing would make sense, and back in the day when you didn't have like necessarily the technology and like the digital tools that we're able to, they just kind of tested shit out. And I always saw the meme that there was it was like doctors in the 1800s. Oh, you've got ghost in your blood. Do cocaine about it. So I mean, hey, it might not be actually fixing the problem, but it'll make you feel to a point where like the problem's no longer there.
Well, like. But that's what I was going to say, like, as far as their technology not being as advanced, like, depending on which civilization you look at, like, going back in time, like, they found mummies that had, like, evidence of, like, them doing, like, C-sections on them or whatever, like, that died, like, during a C-section or whatever, or, like, that it was a successful C-section, like, all the way back in ancient Egypt.
Well,
so,
yeah,
like 3,000 years ago, they were, doing C-sections and stuff. So if they were that technical with their medical knowledge, then
I think that that's not necessarily technical at that point in time. I mean, it would make sense that if you're having, because they would obviously know that like there's something wrong during the birth, we got to cut this baby out. Obviously, at that point, it would be like, do you sacrifice the mother's life or the baby's life? But they probably had some sort of understanding that if they just sacrificed the mother and cut the baby out, it'd be all right.
But it's like, what if the mother, like, what if they were doing it like, and they were like able to keep the mother alive, like,
Well.
I don't know whether that's the case or not, obviously.
Yeah, we can't necessarily know all that thing because they might have died. The C-section things for all those mummies or whatever, they might have died because of that C-section.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, I think, what is probably the more likely situation.
There's a lot of wild stuff, and people think that these ancient civilizations are like stupid, but I think that people don't realize that they were a lot more technologically advanced.
They're the same human beings that we are today, like from a like anatomy structure.
Yeah.
Like we are the same. Like Homo sapiens sapien has been around for like I think they're dating it back to like 200,000 years now.
Something like that. But
so like
it's the same genetic structure. Like they have these thoughts, these theoretical thoughts. They can be deep thinkers. It's just at this point, time has progressed to a point where someone a beautiful mind was able to create a theory and then figure something out.
Yeah,
now that knowledge is there for everyone, and the knowledge is just completely built to where we are today. So, yeah, hopefully this blood thing pans out, and then we can start, transfusing our kids' blood into us and stay youthful forever. I'm still banking on cyborg technology and being downloaded into a matrix. That's what I'm banking on, because I'm not dying.
Have you? Well, I guess we can get into it when we get into what have you been sipping on. But have you seen that show that was on Netflix where like they I can't think of the name of it right now, where like they basically like had download their consciousness and they put them in like new sleeves and stuff and like.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
That show's badass. At least the first season was.
Carbon Theory.
Yeah, Carbon Theory.
Carbon Theory. The first season was all right. The second season was not.
Yeah, no. Once they changed him to a completely different. Yeah. I mean, which makes sense because that's the whole point of the show. Like, this
yeah,
sleeves,
it does.
But,
and it kind of makes it easy because now you don't have to like build on your contracts or whatever. You just give the main character a new sleeve and cast a new person. So,
right.
Yeah.
Fuck you. We're not paying you.
Yeah, that'd be dope. But I'm still waiting for it.